Captain Logan, and it's not Spawn year. It's day 61 of my comic review video day calendar, and yesterday we started Bat March with a detective issue going all the way back to 1968. Today we're going to jump forward to 2005. I'm doing a different Batman title every day, so let's do something completely different, shall we? It's Superman Batman. It still has Batman on the title, even though Superman is first. Number 17. This is written by Jeph Loeb with art by Carlos Pacheco, and tragically, Pacheco died just last year from a spinal disease, and I didn't realize that. It was super sad. He was a Spanish artist who did a lot of work for DC, and he did his own creator stuff. He worked a lot with Kurt Busiek, and I'm glad I looked him up for this because I didn't realize that had happened. Super sad. He was really, really beloved in his country, in his hometown, and certainly very well liked and respected in the American comic industry as well. Jeph Loeb, of course, is like hit and miss is an understatement with his writing. His Superman Batman was super popular when it started. There was a lot of novelty to this book in putting these characters together and doing these big over-the-top romp kind of stories. He would really shake up things with a lot of crazy stuff, that toys that he'd just pull out of the toy box and mix together. He liked to go all the way back, pulling stuff from Golden, Silver, and Modern, and he would he would write stories that seemed very fanficky to me, that on a first read I would be kind of blown away by and really excited about, just because of the audacity of them and how supercharged they were. They were always big events, and felt very important in the moment, and then you'd realize how Saturday morning cartoon they were and how unsustainable the continuity would be if we kept building too much on them, and the core of them would kind of fall apart at some point. Hush is like this. I think a lot of his Superman Batman is like this. Even Long Halloween to some degree, which I do certainly like, is it kind of falls apart by the end. The answer to the mystery doesn't really add up, doesn't really make a lot of sense. And I'm glad that at this point we have an adaptation of that story in the animated films that sticks the landing at the end a lot better and is overall, kind of a better story. But I don't hate Jeph Loeb. He has a lot of really fun ideas. I feel like he is kind of in some ways, and this might sound really insulting, in either direction, depending on who you like and who you don't. But I feel like in some ways he's kind of the original Dan Slott, where he'll go to these really nutso audacious ideas. We're like, I can't believe anybody would ever think to do this outside of a fan fiction. And the real question is, why did anybody at editorial let these guys do some of this stuff? I think those writers are kind of on par to some degree. Maybe Loeb edges him out some, because I have liked more of his serious stuff than I've liked Dan Slott's serious stuff. And don't get me wrong, I like Slott as a writer a lot if you put him on the right kind of stuff, because I think he's really good for all ages and for cartoon stuff based on cartoons. Loeb, I think, is actually not bad at some more serious stuff, and he just really likes writing this goofier cartoon stuff and trying to mix those things together. And I just don't think he always manages the balance, and I think he needs sometimes just another draft that he doesn't end up doing. I think he turns things in prematurely. I've always kind of felt that way with his writing, at least once I started realizing the holes in some of it, because I loved a lot of Loeb growing up, and then later on, in high school, and then later on I would look back at it and be like, oh, this, like on a second, third read, this doesn't really hold together. So Loeb is kind of the epitome of writing stuff for the moment that doesn't hold up later over time. This issue is a weird one to jump into all by itself, and I decided to do this basically because of the title of this issue. So this is in the middle of a story arc. I'm not going to do very much of that this month, but this is part 4 of a 5-issue story arc that, once again, I've not read the rest of. It's Absolute Power, but this chapter is called World Without Batman, and I figured I'm always doing Death of Superman stuff. It might be fun to do a kind of throwback to that, but with Batman. So the setup here, again, it's very novel, it's very gimmicky. We have a crisis of sorts, although it's not called that, where there are evil versions of the Legion of Superheroes that have, and I don't know if they call themselves the Legion Lords or not, but considering that they have names like Saturn Queen and Lightning Lord instead of Lightning Lad, my guess is they're the, I haven't looked into this because I don't want spoilers in case I read the rest of this arc, but because, you know, it's ridiculous and insane, and it's not great, but I kind of want to know what happens, so I'll probably go in and look at it at some point. That's my kind of conflicted relationship with Jeph Loeb stories, is I recognize when they're not working, but I also go, yeah, but I kind of want to finish it. I kind of want to know what happens. I think he has too many of my sensibilities, and then just doesn't stick the landing with them a lot. Anyway, so the idea here is what I'm calling the Legion Lords have screwed up time, and they've gone back and made sure that Clark Kent doesn't get, or Kal-El doesn't get picked up by the Kents, and that Bruce Wayne's parents don't get murdered. So the future is bleak because we don't have the world's finest. We don't have our heroes. And Superman decides to go back and try to, see what they've messed up and try to stop them from doing it, and he fails. And the reason he fails is because Batman is with him. Batman snaps. He loses it. I think this is built on something of a false premise. I'll be interested to see in the comments if folks agree with me on this, because I can maybe see both sides to this, but I'm just not sure I buy Batman doing this. They go back in time, and they have to tragically make sure that Bruce Wayne's parents are murdered. And of course, Batman doesn't want to do this, and who would? But for the sake of preserving the timeline, and for the sake of the greater good, things have to happen the way they happen. You gotta worry about paradoxes. You gotta worry about the, unraveling the space-time continuum. All of that good Back to the Future stuff. And this is very, very Back to the Future, by the way. This whole issue feels based on Back to the Future 2. We have a dystopian present that has been created by changes in the timeline, going back to one of our protagonists' childhood. And so of course, Back to the Future is not childhood, it's before that, but you know what I mean. So what happens is Batman in the previous issue, and there's some recapping at the beginning that is not too in your face or anything, but I appreciated it because I am reading this out of context, and we still in 2005, and even today we still do this some, but we still got that attitude of some kid or adult is going to pull this off the stand, not having read the rest of it just based on the cover. Because I mean, if you're going to sell books still by covers, and especially if you're not going to tell me what number you're on, what chapter number you're on for a story on the cover, then I might pick it up sight unseen, not realizing that I'm in the middle of a story arc. So it is nice to catch me up to speed a little bit in as natural and unclunky a way as possible. So I don't have art for this because it's happened already, but basically the idea is Batman, I've taken too long to get to this point. My apologies. Batman stops his parents from getting killed. He just snaps, and he, as far as I can tell, he grabs the gun. We see kind of a flashback, almost in like detective vision, to put it in Arkham City terms, where it seems like Batman grabs the gun out of Joe Chill's hands and shoots Joe Chill. Crazy. And I don't know if I buy that Batman would do that. Again, I kind of see both sides of it. I kind of see just in the moment losing yourself and forgetting the greater good and forgetting everything else around it. But at the same time, I don't expect Batman to get over his parents' death. Like, part of the point is that he can't do that. But I also think that with his mission statement, with his vow, making sure this never happens to anyone else, it's in his mind, even if he changes it, it happened. It's always going to have happened, and it wouldn't change the man he is if he was able to continue from that point. But then Jeph Loeb gets really weird with his time travel rules or lack thereof, and it's very sloppy, and I do not understand it. He's basically just making things up as he goes along, and like making up rules as he goes along. So I've tried to just sort this out. I don't understand it, so I'll just explain what we have here. So here's what happens. Superman is in this world that Ra's al Ghul has taken over because there is no Batman, and Ra's has outlawed what everybody calls capes. So so we've put this in terms of the Incredibles, and he goes. And Superman's really confused because everybody's after him just because he is a superhero, and those are outlawed. So it's kind of Watchmen-esque, and he goes to Batman, or he goes to Bruce Wayne, whose parents are still alive, and he is a legitimate playboy now. And Superman later says that he seems happy, and he hates that he's having to take that away from him. I'm not seeing that at all from this exchange. He seems bored. He seems like he's not really enjoying himself, and like he's just kind of playing it up and pretending to, was really what I got from this scene. But apparently, at least according to Clark Kent, he's happy now, and he's having to take this wonderful life away from Bruce Wayne. And so he goes to Bruce, and he reveals that he's Superman, and he says, you ruined the timeline because you saved your parents, and I have to break to you that we have to find some way to fix this. And Bruce, after a while, just suddenly remembers everything. Like, he knows that he remembers his parents being killed in the alley, and Superman, reminds him of the night where that almost happened, and Batman coming in and stopping his parents' death, and he's like, I don't want to relive that night. Why do you have to, talk to me about this? And then it turns from that into, look, Clark, I remember everything. And it seems like at first it's an amnesia thing, and then he suddenly remembers his whole history as Batman. I don't understand that. That doesn't make any sense to me. Because this seems like Back to the Future logic entirely, where you can go back in time, you can change things. If you are from the future and you show up to a period where yourself is there, you can interact with yourself. And versions of you that would not be created by that timeline would disappear in the future. So, and that kind of happens. So, when Batman stops his parents from being murdered, he disappears. He just poofs out of existence, like Marty McFly almost does at the end of the first Back to the Future. And then this Bruce Wayne, 10 years old, grows up and lives in a world where his parents are fine. And then Superman uses whatever their mechanic is for time travel, because we're not told. He's just jumping around time. He goes to the present to see how much they messed things up, and this is the dystopian world that he's in. It's not a dystopia for Bruce Wayne, but it is for superheroes, certainly. And like, to some degree, it's got to be an oppressive dictatorship. It's Ra's al Ghul lording over everything. And he hasn't been through anything Batman's been through. This is not a version that was ever Batman. So why would he suddenly have memories of being Batman? I don't understand it. And I don't want to overthink it, because I don't think Jeph Loeb has really given it any thought either. He just needs this to happen because he's at the penultimate issue of this arc and needs to propel forward and get the thing finished. So suddenly Bruce has all of his memories and goes, yeah, it sucks, but I'm going to do what I have to do. And Superman says, I'm sure Batman. There's a lot of internal monologue for both characters. We do this a lot in Superman Batman, where you get into both of their heads and how they feel about each other, which I like. And Superman says, I'm sure he hates me and he has every right to, but this is necessary. We have to make sure that our backgrounds are the same as they were. And Batman says, we have to go to the cemetery, and this is quintessential Jeph Loeb stuff, and dig up all of the dead Justice League that Ra's al Ghul killed. Okay, so in order to fix this timeline, they're going to resurrect the Justice League, put them in a Lazarus pit, or I strike that, reverse it. They're going to put them in a Lazarus pit to resurrect the Justice League, and then take them up against the Legion Lords, or whatever they're calling themselves. This is all just for the audacity of it, right? Just for the sheer, insanity of doing this story. Could we have gotten here in a more natural way that wasn't kind of throwing Batman under the bus like this, and with time travel rules that I don't understand at all? Yeah, probably. Even the Lazarus Pit has been kind of reworked a little bit. You see what I mean? I don't want these things to be in continuity. I wish it was always Elseworld stuff, or that Jeph Loeb could just have his own, his own continuity, his own ultimate DC. I would be able to. It would still be crazy, and there would be things that would be difficult to accept, but easier to accept if it's its own world, I think. So anyway, The Lazarus Pit itself has been kind of reworked, because I don't think you could do this with the Lazarus Pit, where you could take bodies that have been dead for a long time. I don't know how long the Justice League has been dead, but it's not been a few minutes or a few days. I mean, it's been years, and resurrect them. And it seems like Loeb knows that, and he's trying to fudge it. He's trying to build that into... He's trying to kind of retcon it while at the same time acknowledging what the rules used to be. So he says, Ra's Lazarus Pit, it restores life to the dying or to the recently dead. Recently dead. These guys are not recently dead. But all of them have been here so long. Yeah, so this shouldn't do anything. Maybe make them zombies for a couple minutes, but they have their wits about them. And also, I should say, for some reason, know they've been dead a long time. It feels like it's been so long. It's like you didn't have brain function. The way you should experience time is you die, and then all of a sudden you wake up, and it should be kind of seamless, right? But somehow they experience the passage of time. Okay. And then he says he won't have much time before they all die again forever. So that's how he's retconning it. He's saying if you bring back dead people with the Lazarus Pit, they're fine. They don't even come back crazy or insanely angry and agitated or anything. They're just themselves. But the trade-off is they're not going to live very long. Okay, that's new. Jeph Loeb just kind of made that up. And then they go up against Ra's al Ghul at the end, and the big reveal is he is with what I've been calling the Legion Lords, with Saturn Queen and all of these guys. And my eyes glaze over because I don't care about Legion, but it's like, well, we haven't done evil, scary dictator or I should say fascist versions of these characters yet, so that's got to happen. It just feels like throwing a bunch of random stuff in a blender. But there is a novelty to this. There's some fun stuff in it, and I certainly like the art. I like some of the shadow work. I like his faces quite a bit. Loeb also gets very gimmicky, or I should say kind of cute, with references to his own stuff. This is maybe a year or two after he stops working on Smallville, I think, or is he only there for the first season? I think he was working on that for a couple seasons, but I could be wrong about that. Anyway, this is '05. He's got a reference to Smallville toward the beginning of this, where the military is going up against Superman because, oh no, it's a superhero, and those are outlawed, and there's a... where is it? It's down here. There's a general who says, no flights, no tights. Okay, you gotta have references like that, and that's what this kind of thing with Loeb. And not all of his writing is like this. The color books, generally speaking, are not like this, and I certainly like some of those. But he'll very often make the thing less about a cohesive narrative that has an internal logic, and more about just getting to these moments and references and just crazy stuff happening. And then the other one is he's got, because he wrote Hush, he's got Bruce Wayne palling around with Tommy Elliott. And they don't seem to get along super well, but again, we're told that Bruce is happy. Like, it seems like Loeb just doesn't have a good sense of his character's motivations, or he doesn't know how to create naturally what he's telling us is happening. There's a lot of telling and not showing, or showing that is different from the telling, I should say. But yeah, so Tommy Elliott is here, and Bruce introduces him to Clark as Tommy Elliott, but then Elliott says, "Oh, it's Dr. Elliott, Bruce." Like, I'm reading in subtext that I guess is not supposed to be there, but is clearly there, and it's weird. Last thing I want to mention that I should have said earlier, that I think is, again, just really sloppy writing, and this may seem a little nitpicky, but it kind of shows a symptom of a larger problem, which is just general carelessness in the writing. He has, because again, it's all about throwback, it's all about references, so he is, in some ways, kind of the wrong kind of fan service. Loeb goes, well, we've got to have a reference to Thomas Wayne putting on a bat suit before Bruce Wayne is Batman. You have that classic idea that he wore that at a costume party, and that's where Bruce Wayne got the idea. And so we have that here. Clark is introduced to Thomas Wayne with his mustache, wearing a classic Batman costume, with the old symbol that looks very 40s, and a belt that does, but then and ears that do too. But it's not purple, and it's kind of a cool looking suit. And Bruce is going to wear it later because he doesn't, of course, have a bat suit. So Clark, I guess, goes back off camera or off panel and steals it so that Bruce can dress up as Batman. And anyway, it doesn't make any sense to me that Thomas Wayne would be wearing a superhero costume, and that these kids up the top would be wearing superhero costumes on Halloween in a world where superheroes are outlawed and everybody is paranoid about them, and they, in like the most disparaging term, it seems, you can call someone is a cape. Like, Lois Lane freaks out when Superman goes to her and says, "Oh, I don't know any capes. I don't know anybody like that. Where is it?" And in that world, little kids are dressing up as superheroes? It's like Loeb forgot what he was writing for a minute. So anyway, more than a mixed bag, and not great writing, pretty sloppy, and yet some novelty here. That's fun. I don't mind reading this stuff. It just also kind of drives me crazy. I just wish it was out of continuity. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll be here again tomorrow with another one, and I didn't get a chance to get ahead on these before I'm going out of town, so I'm going to do some more phone reviews on the road for some Batman comics, so look forward to those, and hopefully I can live stream sometime this weekend. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching. I was Captain Logan, and happy reading.